rise of the West in Asia. Portuguese seaborne dominance eventually gave way to that of other Western powers, Holland, France, Great Britain, and the United States in their turn. Now, as China and India compete for ports and access routes along the southern Eurasian rimland, and with the future strength of the U.S. Navy uncertain, because of America's own economic travails and the diversionary cost of its land wars, it is possible that the 500-year chapter of Western preponderance is slowly beginning to close. This gradual power shift could not come at a more turbulent time for the lands bordering the Indian Ocean's two halves, the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal. At the top of the Arabian Sea is Pakistan. At the top of the Bay of Bengal is Burma, both highly volatile and populous pivot states. Analysts normally don't put those two countries in the same category, but they should. Then, of course, there is the whole political future of the Islamic world from Somalia to Indonesia to consider. Besides their proximity to the Indian Ocean, so many of these places are characterized by weak institutions, tottering infrastructures, and young and restive populations tempted by extremism. Yet they are the future, much more than the graying populations of the West. As the late Belgian scholar Charles Verlinden once noted, the Indian Ocean is surrounded by not less than 37 countries representing a third of the world's population, and extends for more than 80 degrees in latitude and more than 100 degrees in longitude. I can only visit a few points along the Indian Ocean seaboard and see what is currently going on, so as to further illuminate a wider canvas and to show what a world without a superpower looks like on the ground. The Indian Ocean region is more than just a stimulating geography. It is an idea because it provides an insightful visual impression of Islam and combines the centrality of Islam with global energy politics and the importance of world navies in order to show us a multi-layered, multipolar world above and beyond the headlines in Iraq and Afghanistan. It is also an idea because it allows us to see the world whole with a very new and yet very old framework, complete with its own traditions and characteristics, without having to drift into bland nostrums about globalization. The book begins with a broad strategic overview of the region. Then I move on to individual locations along this great seaboard. Oman is my principal reference point, where I consider the ocean's medieval history, as well as the legacy of the first Western power, the Portuguese. There, too, I ponder the perennial relationship between the sea and the desert, and how each leads to different political paths. Then I focus on massive Chinese harbor projects, smack in the heart of zones of regional separatism in the case of Pakistan, and of ethnic rivalry in the case of Sri Lanka. In Bangladesh, I write about the interrelationship of climate change, extreme poverty, and Islamic radicalism. In India, I focus on Hindu extremism, which is being overcome by economic and social dynamism. In Burma, I report on the collision between India and China over a devastated and resource-rich landscape, and the challenges it presents for Western powers like the United States. In Indonesia, I explore the relationship between democracy and a vibrant, syncretic Islam, so different from that in Pakistan and Bangladesh, for Islam, as I learned in many of these places, is more intelligently considered against the backdrop of a specific landscape and history. Finally, I consider Chinese naval expansion originating in the eastern end of the greater Indian Ocean, and at the western end, take a peek at African renewal through the prism of Zanzibar. Everywhere, I attempt to describe the ceaseless currents of historical change as they shape the contours of the new century. It is the intermingling of challenges in each place, religious, economic, political, environmental, rather than each challenge in isolation, that creates such drama. The monsoon of which I speak is more than just a storm system, which it sometimes comes across as in the English language lexicon. It is, too, a life-affirming and beneficial climatic phenomenon, so necessary over the centuries for trade, globalization, unity, and progress. The monsoon is nature writ large, a spectacle of turbulence that suggests the effect of the environment on humankind living in increasingly crowded and fragile conditions in places like Bangladesh and Indonesia. In a densely interconnected world, America's ability to grasp what, in a larger sense, the monsoon represents and to recognize its manifold implications